are dealing with the big question today, the scientific revolution. Is it, or how revolutionary is it? That is going to be our focus point when we look at the documents. And in just a few minutes, I want to turn you loose to kind of work individually, and then I want you to pair up to do it.
So I wanted to address how revolutionary the scientific revolution may have been, and to consider ultimately other factors that may have shaped the scientific revolution. But the deeper objective ultimately was to work on skills surrounding text, text analysis, and skills that can be then transferred not only in a written text, but also in a visual text.
You will notice in this packet, this front reading on Galileo is a little bit longer. Here's what I want you to do. As you're going through it, I want you to be paying attention to the text like we always do, circling important words and phrases and underline important observations. That's what we're going to come back and have a conversation with. Also be thinking about factors, things that shaped the scientific revolution.
Today I made a careful choice to put one of the more challenging texts first. I wanted them to wrestle with it immediately. So that was kind of the centerpiece of where I wanted to start.
So I think he's saying that the scientific revolution is revolutionary, but no one wants to accept it because it's different from what the Bible says.
Like, he thinks his discoveries are like enhancing the church, even though they really split the church in science because of what people in the church think. I definitely think it's revolutionary because everyone is so resistant to it and it's so new.
But then something that kind of suggests that it's maybe not so revolutionary is this document, because they're still like subjugating women. That's not very revolutionary.
Your love of letters and science.
Right,
Yeah, I found that interesting too.
He also says, I shrink from no man's criticism, which kind of sets a precedent for all the other scientists to come, that even though they were criticized, they weren't going to stop and they were just going to continue learning new things.
Mm-hmm. And even having like the Catholic priest on their side was interesting because, now they have like someone from the church helping them out.
Right, and Galileo in the first article mentions that too, because that they forget, Catholics forget all the time, that the restorer and confirmer of astronomy and the sciences was a Catholic, but he was also a priest. And so he was kind of criticizing the RCC for being hypocritical.
One of the greatest parts of being a social studies teacher is the opportunity to wrestle with primary and secondary sources. And so that opportunity to put those texts in front of students and to have students make meaning of those texts is at the heart of the discipline of social studies.
What did you see? What struck you about some of these documents immediately after our first reading?
Well, I feel like all of the document mentioned like the church to some degree, so which show that the scientific revolution was kind of sort of like against the church and authority.
Which document did you see that primarily in?
In the last document by Copernicus,
yes,
it showed that well, he's trying to say that the scientific revolution doesn't, act against the church, but it actually helped it, like, to improve the discovering of the truth.
Wonderful. And he refers to the church a couple of times. We've got the church with this authority piece, and there kind of seems to be some opposition, and they have to be wide-ranging. Really, really good.
I think that it's not necessarily them trying to go against the church. I think that they think that what they've discovered can actually enhance church teaching, and it's everyone else that's rejecting them.
Love that idea. Where do you see it?
Like in the last reading with Copernicus, he says, towards the Pope, you, by your influence and judgment, can readily hold the slanderers from biting. So it's like the Pope has the power to make the discoveries part of the religion and kind of to embrace it, but then he chooses not to.
Love it. Love it. Did we see that anywhere else in the text of anyone else kind of just wanting to do the work?
In the first document, it's a woman, and she's studying insects and how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. And then also in the second one, they're talking about a girl, Maria, and what she's like preparing a calendar, and she's a woman, and they were kind of like rejecting that. And then it says, I found this part interesting. It says, even before her husband's death, which means that her husband also was like okay with her, like doing the stuff.
Let's dig into a couple of these in particular. Let's look at Galileo. What seemed to be important here? What is Galileo saying? What do we have that seems to be... Ryan, what should we notice here?
In the first paragraph,
Yeah.
the last sentence, where he says, they seem to forget that the increase of known truth stimulates the investigation, establishment, and growth of arts. So he's basically saying that people don't realize that without the increased knowledge, like throughout Europe, then none of the scientific revolution would have ever happened.
Michael, go ahead.
In the second paragraph, he really defutes or like counter argues what the different professors and philosophers were saying about him, saying that, you know, in the church that, you know, they tried to do the Bible and talk about the Bible, but they didn't understand what they were talking about, and that like it didn't really work for their purposes.
Where do you see that? Yeah.
Bottom of the second paragraph.
Yep. So part of what Galileo seems to be doing here is he's taking some shots at the church. Where else is he taking some shots?
Like in the second paragraph, when he's saying like I confute Ptolemy's system, he's talking about disproving like the hypotheses of Aristotle and Ptolemy, the supposed geniuses of the church.
Abby, go ahead.
Also, he says in the beginning of the third paragraph, persisting in their original resolve to destroy me. So it's like not people just aren't just against him; they're actually trying to destroy him.
Yeah. Notice that he is not saying that they're trying to destroy his argument. They're trying to destroy me.
Not only in a written text, but I will also say that I wanted to deal with visual texts. And so I made a careful choice early on that I wanted to include at least one, and ultimately chose 2 visual texts that would also kind of speak to this wider picture of the scientific revolution.
Let's deal with the first one here from Maria Marion. What did you take away here? What? Go ahead, Rachel.
I thought it was really significant that she learned the art of drawing through her works in the science. So Galileo said that science could enrich the arts, and she proves it. Like, she removes herself from society, which means she self-taught herself how to work with the arts because it helps her in her pursuits of the science.
You've made that wonderful connection back to Galileo here. And I want to seize on what you said because I think it's really important for us. That it's not just about science. It's about art. Or, and maybe this circles back to our earlier comment here with Ben too, that there's a wider range of knowledge. That maybe what we have narrowly and strictly too often thought about as the scientific revolution is actually something wider and something broader and something deeper.
One of the realities that students of the 21st century are facing is that they have more information that's probably sitting in their pocket than I ever had access to when I was a student. I think what has benefited my students has been the opportunity for them to use and manipulate, evaluate, and critically approach that wide, incredibly vast body of knowledge that they have access to. But ultimately, I also think that they have walked away with a richer experience by looking at a primary source text, that they are the interpreters and they are the readers, and those are ultimately skills that are lifelong skills that can be transferred outside of the classroom. I hope that they realize that they have this incredible opportunity and they have this capability to do this thing that they never thought that they could before.